Fantastic.
All right. But meanwhile, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll talk about this a little bit more. Just so you know, fans, Ryan Skolrud and I have our weekly fantasy show here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. And tomorrow it'll be aired at 8 Eastern Time, and it will be released after we put it out there. So, all right, Ryan, once again, good work. We're going to bring in your UK buddy afterwards, and he's probably going to give us some more information on the Jalen Ramsey trade. But good stuff, and we're going to go into a lot more details tomorrow. So thank you, Ryan Skolrud. I appreciate it. We'll do it again tomorrow, all right?
Sounds great.
All right.
Always a joy to be on the show.
Oh, we love having you. Thank you, Ryan.
Take care, Ryan. Have a good night.
All right. So while we have a moment, okay, Louis, before Anthony calls on here, you had an opportunity to talk about your experience with covering your first Florida Atlantic University game.
Yeah, so I mean, I told you when we went to that game, I went there for 4 years and I never made it out to a game. That's just because, pre-existing factors that, kind of kept me busy and preoccupied. But that was fun, man, getting to sit in the press box, getting to talk with, some old friends I went to school with who are working kind of in the same field that I am, meeting other writers, working for other news publications. It was fun. Pretty cool. I mean, and, FAU's defense was pretty much the highlight of that game, other than, for me on a personal level, getting to cover it on a professional level. That was pretty neat. Obviously, we saw Asher O'Hara, quarterback for Middle Tennessee. Very nice quarterback, got a strong arm, very, mobile, dual threat, but, he came into some problems when it came to FAU's defense. I believe they had 3 interceptions, turnovers on that, and, fascinating game, and even it just shows you how good of a team they've been this year, despite, Chris Robinson, who, only completed 50% of those passes on Saturday. He was 15 for 30. Didn't look as good as he had all season long, where he was, came into that game second in the Conference USA in passing yards up until that game. And, even despite that, his defense bailed him out. And we've seen ugly wins like that in the NFL, too. But it was fun to watch, especially covering it and having to write a story on it. You have to be involved in that regard.
Well, I knew it was new territory for you, but not new territory for me. So, you'll have a couple more shots at FAU football, and then you're going to get involved with the basketball side.
Yeah.
Until I turn you loose later on this spring and you get to cover all the baseball games you can handle.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be where the star will shine the brightest, I guess. You want to put it that way. But,
well, that's okay. No, that's okay.
Yeah.
You have
it's going to be fun,
sports that you're very good at, and you're learning the ropes. But, yeah, I mean, I've been to thousands of sporting events. So it was good to see you there. I didn't mind taking a low-key approach. Watching you develop a little bit more, you have nothing but upside. And I'll say it, folks. He doesn't have to say it.
Yeah.
But, no, with all due respect, it's one of those types of situations where, you cover a live event. It's a lot different than writing a story where you can sit behind your computer research. Everything's all in real time with what you're doing. And that gave you your first opportunity. So
yeah, we have to give a shout-out to Katrina, who works over with FAU's Broadcasting Network. She did a terrific job, working with me and all the other writers there, kind of getting them situated, getting them what they needed to. So I love the hospitality on FAU's end. You have to thank Lane Kiffin and Robinson, and I'm forgetting his last name, but Aquiles, who, did the post-game interviews with us.
Right.
Nick Birdie, backup quarterback, who did post-game with us.
Well, but the thing is, I've worked with Katrina McCormick since 2007. She's a real great lady. Justin Johnson's another guy I work with, so... they're good people, and I know from you being a graduate, seeing it for the first time, it was certainly something else. But meanwhile, we got Anthony Wood coming on the program, and Anthony Wood, thank you very much for coming out about a minute earlier. And again, with information like Jalen Ramsey, why not? Right, Anthony?
Absolutely. It's not exactly the news we were expecting today, I think it's safe to say.
So go ahead. Talk to me.
But yes, absolutely. So the same day as the Rams lose Akeem Talib to IR, and they also traded quarterback Marcus Peters to the Ravens in a corresponding move. They must have had this in the pipeline for at least a day or so now. They've brought in Jalen Ramsey, 2 first-round picks and a 4th-round pick, which I believe is also next year. So a relatively hefty price tag if you look at it that way, especially considering that he's only got, I believe, another year or 2 left on his deal. He's going to have to sign a new contract. So you would assume that they're going into this knowing that they can agree on an extension, or perhaps they're using this as a last-ditch attempt to win a Super Bowl, perhaps whilst Jared Goff is still on his rookie contract, and they're making the most of the cap space they have available now. It's an interesting move, and it's a bold one, to say the least. It's going to change their prospects moving forward. No doubt they haven't been performing quite as expected recently, but this is going to give them certainly give them that boost on defense. And it's a bold statement by the team as well. It's a statement of intent, if nothing else, that they still believe this could be their year, or next year could be their year. But it throws up a lot of questions as well as answers. At the same time, you can't help but wonder, what's their plan moving forward then for him? I mean, are they going to keep him long term? Are they going to be able to sign into a new deal, as well as having to sign the likes of Goff to a new deal, and then a number of others? Cooper Kupp, for example, is another one that's going to be requiring a new deal relatively soon. So it's an interesting move. It's one that I don't think anyone really expected. We didn't think at this point in time that Ramsey was going to get traded, so it's surprising to say the least. But yes, I was curious as to your thoughts, obviously being down in the Jacksonville area.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good thing. Okay, I'm going to address it in a couple different areas. Number one, I'm glad you brought up the Talib trade, move to IR. That definitely motivated this move without a doubt. Number two, Tom Coughlin was determined to get what he wanted, and he was looking for 2 first-round picks, and he got it, and got a fourth with it. So, and remember, Ramsey hasn't played the last couple of weeks, so you got a guy who obviously hasn't played. So at this point, you found a taker, and of course, don't forget that these two teams traded. Dante Fowler went west last year, so there's a history between the trading between these two teams. So I'm not surprised that it was inevitable, but Tom Coughlin, give him a lot of credit. He held out. Doug Marrone doesn't have to deal with this headache anymore, and as long as the Jaguars can cash in on those picks, more power to them. But I think you're right, Anthony. You nailed it. There was a desperation move on the Rams, and they'll figure out the money later. Louis, you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, so I was telling you before the show, I genuinely think that this is kind of like a sign of trust that the Jaguars are placing in Minshew. And granted, he hasn't been great over the past couple of weeks. I understand that. But I genuinely think that they see a lot of promise in him, despite the fact that he wasn't a high draft pick coming out of college. But I genuinely think they could maybe invest in a wide receiver, further shore up the offensive line, maybe even draft another cornerback with one of those 2 draft picks that they have going forward in the next 2 drafts. And you know what? Maybe Foles gets traded again when he comes back. But I think the biggest takeaway I can take from this is that, you know what? Maybe they see Minshew this year for Minshew, because of Foles' extended leave of absence due to his clavicle injury. Maybe they see this as more of a development year for him. And then, come the 2020 draft, when they get to use one of those first-round draft picks, they get somebody that could aid him moving forward. Maybe it's on the offensive side, or maybe they say they draft another corner, shore up the offensive line. I just think that it's a sign of them looking towards the future. They're not, I understand being in the right now is important, but this trade signifies that they have some sort of groundwork being laid towards, what's coming forward in the ensuing future.
Yeah, but I think that the Jaguars can win right now, to be honest with you. They got 2 games in the next 2 weeks, okay, against the Jets and the Bengals. The Bengals this week. They have to come away with that stretch 4-4, or Doug Marrone's in trouble. We'll get to that another time, Anthony and Louis. But
I'd agree with you there. I think they should come away from this Bengals game at the very least with a victory. I mean, if they don't go away from that with a win, something is desperately wrong. With regards to the Jets game, I don't know. I like what the Jets are doing at the moment. I've been very impressed with them this last week or so, and they've got talent. So that's the game I would worry about a little bit, especially now with Sam Darnold back with a slightly thinner secondary. That would be my concern, is how are they going to replace someone like him? I know obviously they haven't had him for the last couple of weeks, but he's going to be a difficult guy to replace, especially in the short term.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. But, I'm not saying, well, listen, let's not lose sight of the fact that the Jets ambushed the Cowboys 24-22.
Like the big comeback victory there.
They did, but they did ambush them. Everybody gave Dallas, they were heavy favorites going into this game. Amari Cooper goes down with an injury, and as if Cobb went down, what was it, Randall Cobb went down, and the Cowboys were down a couple wideouts, and Dak Prescott doesn't even make 300 yards, and they're relying on Ezekiel Elliott to do it all for them. So, yeah, I think that Darnold's presence certainly makes the Jets better, but I still think Jacksonville, they still have some offensive weapons that I do believe they should be able to beat the Jets, and I think that they need to come away from the next 2 weeks 4-4. I really do believe that. But as far as the Ramsey trade, Tom Coughlin, I'll say it again, guys, okay, held out and got what he wanted. And once you held out, there's always a desperate team out there, and the Rams were definitely that desperate team. It's their problem about signing him, but Jacksonville got what they had to get rid of. and more importantly, they got rid of a distraction anyhow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And the fact that they'll have a little financial relief, not having to worry about Jalen Ramsey's salary later. It's just time to turn the page with them, so Doug Marrone doesn't have to answer all these questions because Tom Coughlin stays in the background doing it. So I don't know. Now, obviously, nothing like breaking news, right, Anthony?
Oh, you gotta love it. I mean, it's getting so close to the trade deadline now. It's so exciting, and I think that I'm convinced there's going to be at least a couple more trades before the end of the trade deadline.
Yeah, what we're going to do, Anthony, tonight is we're going to hold off on the XFL draft top names until Thursday. By then, the draft should be completed. All right, how's that sound? Okay, and I want to focus on a couple of other NFL topics, if I may. All right, well, let's talk about injury updates. Okay.
Yes, so there's obviously it's been a bad week, if we're being honest, but in terms of injuries. It's been particularly poor. The Texans lost two of their starters. Bradley Roby, he's out for at least 3 games with a hamstring injury. They were already down Jonathan Joseph, also with a hamstring injury. That hurts them. And then also, first-round rookie offensive tackle Titus Howard is out from anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks with an MCL injury. He was lucky not to tear his MCL or ACL, but he is out for the moment, so that gives them another hole. They've already signed a replacement off the Patriots practice squad, but that's certainly not what they were hoping going into a tough stretch of games. The Patriots, speaking of them, defensive end Michael Bennett has been suspended a game by the team for conduct detrimental to the team, which was somewhat unexpected. But yes, though, he's not been at training this week either. They've also decided to work out 4 kickers and a punter today alone. They've just cut Young-Hoo Koo from the practice squad, the kicker, formerly of the Chargers. So I think it shows they're not 100% happy, perhaps, with Mike Nugent or the punter for that matter. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye out on. We know how strict Belichick is about getting the most out of special teams, so that's something to keep an eye out for. Obviously, going back to the Rams, we mentioned a key to leave. Marcus Peters gone to the Ravens in a trade involving Kenny Young, the linebacker for the Ravens, going the other way. The Rams have also lost guard Joseph Noteboom for the year on IR. They've also traded, as a result, they've traded a 2021 fifth-round pick for Browns center Austin Corbett to help bulk up that offensive line. So there's been a lot of moves for the Jets today, I think it's safe to say, for the Rams today. But yes, moving on to the Jets, obviously we spoke about them just a minute ago. Another offensive lineman guard, Kelechi Osemele, is to have surgery and he is out for the moment. We don't know how long at this point in time. Going back to cornerbacks, Chiefs cornerback Kendall Fuller has suffered a slight fracture in his thumb and he is out for the moment. Don't know again on the specific timeline for his return. Back to the Patriots, another new headline that's come through is they have signed tight end Eric Tomlinson after losing Matt LaCoste to injury. There's also talk about them bringing Ben Watson back, someone that they cut very recently, but we don't know anything certain yet. The Bengals, again, another team we mentioned just now, coming up against the Jags this coming week, they're going to be without quarterback Dre Kirkpatrick, who's out for a month with a hyperextended knee, so that's good news from the Jags' point of view there, because he's by far their best corner. The Steelers have lost defensive end Stephon Tuitt for a year with a torn pec. That's tough news for a Steelers team. That's not exactly having a year they'd really expected. The Bears have lost Kyle Long, offensive lineman, again for the rest of this year with a hip injury, and his contract is about to be up as well, so that may well be the last game he played for the Bears. And then finally, Akeem Hicks, defensive tackle for the Bears, is now also on IR and out for the year, so it's been a tough day for Bears fans as well. There's been a lot of moves today, during the Rams trade as well. And again, I mentioned it before, I'm convinced there are going to be some more moves. The Texans are in desperate need for another cornerback. I can see them trading for someone. I've heard rumours that they are talking to various teams. Don't know as of yet who it's going to be, but there will be another trade there. I'm relatively confident, especially with O'Brien in charge. And around the NFL as well, it wouldn't surprise me if there were a couple more. Perhaps the Jags look to bring in someone else to sort of as a stopgap for the coming months. We don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens before the trade deadline.
Yeah, and ironically, of all the trade deadlines that I've looked at in the other sports, I find the NFL to be the most interesting trade deadline because really a lot of people don't care about it because a lot of those moves don't hold out long term. All right, well, we'll give you one more thing to talk about, then we'll bring the other things back on Thursday, okay, because obviously Ramsey took precedent over the other things that we're talking about. And we'll stay in Texas with Jason Garrett's situation. What's your take on it, Anthony? What is Jason Garrett's situation?
It's an interesting one, and there's a lot of rumors going around, especially with the defensive coordinator Kellen Moore and Richards. Defensive coordinator doing so well. There's a lot of talk of, well, Garrett's in the last year of his contract. What's going to happen after this season? They just lost 3 straight games after what looked like a hot streak, and I said this after week 3. I said to multiple people, this was not a good test for the Cowboys. Yes, they came out of it looking good, but they were up against three poor teams at the time. And they've really not performed these last